All right, baby, it's put up or shut up time for this dude, all right? I've been in his corner all offseason. This is your time to shine, brother. This is your time to shut the haters up or to prove them right. We're talking about... Let's talk about running backs that you should start or sit in week 1 of the fantasy football season. I'm going to talk about every single team, 32 teams, 16 matchups. At the end of this video, I will have talked about more than 60 running backs, and you'll know exactly what to do heading into week 1. Consider this your complete guide to the position. All right, the first matchup we're going to talk about here is Thursday Night Football, the season opener. We've all been waiting for this. Football is here. Ravens at Chiefs, all right, the defending Super Bowl champions. There's a 46.5 point over under. We've got two very good offenses, but also two relatively good defenses against fantasy running backs, as in this was a tough matchup for your running back in fantasy football on both sides of the defense. Starting with the Ravens side of the ball, the Chiefs defense was middle of the pack against running backs last year, but Derrick Henry, Durka, the king himself, is a must start. He is my RB9 on the week. The Titans were 27th in offensive points per game last year, and Derrick Henry still found a way to finish as the RB8 overall in fantasy football. And now he joins the Ravens, who were 4th in points per game as an offense in 2023. I anticipate a neutral game script here in this game. Both good offenses, good defenses. I think this will be neutral game script. I don't believe Derrick Henry will be pushed out of the game script, and I think he's a fantastic start. Justice Hill, not a name that you can start. Moving on to the Chiefs side of the ball, though, Isaiah Pacheco, another must start. Now, the Ravens were one of the worst matchups you could have for a running back last year. Now, there's a lot of things that change from one year to the next, so we can't use these numbers too closely, but they are important to note. Isaiah Pacheco, my RB16 on the week, averaged over 18 touches per game with this team in 2023, and the Chiefs should be much better as an offense, adding Hollywood Brown, adding Xavier Worthy, more dynamic ability deep down the field, which should open up more space for Isaiah Pacheco as a runner. And as far as the backups, I am very curious to see who's actually the RB2 on this team. I think Samaje Perine has sneaky value, but there's not a player we can start there. All right, let's move on to this second matchup. Guys, if you don't know this, you need to know this piece of information because there is a game on Friday night this week. It's in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Okay, so we are international, Mr. 305 worldwide. You got to set your lineups for this Friday night game. I can't remember a time it's ever happened before, at least maybe COVID, but we got a Friday night game. It's Packers versus Eagles. All right, the over-under is 48.5 points. The Eagles are favored, and there are a lot of fantasy points expected in this matchup. Let's start with the Packers side of the ball. The cheese man got his cheese, and now he makes his Packers debut. That is Josh Jacobs. And Josh Jacobs is absolutely a must start. There's a lot of injuries in this backfield. Marshawn Lloyd finally back at practice, but he's slowly going to be worked into the rotation. I don't see him being a big threat to touches. And then we've also got A.J. Dillon, who's out for the season. So you think about it, Emmanuel Wilson's just a depth piece. Josh Jacobs should feast on touches in this one. And the Eagles were a very difficult defense to face last year. However, a lot of things change from one year to the next, and ultimately, you bet on a good offense like the Packers. All right, for the Eagles side of the ball, this is actually a pretty decent matchup, at least it was last year. Saquon Barkley, another running back on a new team, changing in free agency, makes their debut. I am so excited for this game. Are you guys as excited for football as I am? Because all of these changes in the offseason, we finally get to see them play out in real time. Saquon's a must start. He's my RB4 on the week. I believe they're going to feature him, and you can't start anyone else in that backfield. I have a bold take here, all right? Second matchup, I'm already bringing you a bold take. The Packers and the Eagles, both of these teams' first touchdowns of the year will be from their new star running backs that they added in free agency, Jacobs and Saquon. I think they're the first touchdown scorers in this game. All right, we finally get to move on to the start of the Sunday 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time slate of games, and we're going to Steelers at Falcons, 40.5 point over under. The Falcons are favored, but this is 1 out of 3 matchups that are tied for the lowest over under of the week, meaning Vegas does not expect a lot of points. Now, talking about this Steelers backfield, The latest reports from Jaylen Warren himself is that he is going to play in week 1, which, to be honest, makes things a little less clear in this backfield. Najee is a little bit less of a confident start, in my opinion. If you look last year as well, the Falcons were a terrible matchup for your running back. They were 29th in points allowed. They just added Matthew Judon. Their offense is going to be better, which means their defense won't be on the field as much. And I just think that there is too many concerns just with the offense overall, the defense they're facing, for me to tell you to confidently start Najee or Jaylen Warren. At the moment, if I had to choose one, it would be Najee Harris, because Jaylen Warren is coming off a hamstring injury. We don't know exactly what his role will be in week 1, but there are some serious question marks here. I would say 50% of people have a better start on their roster in smaller leagues than Najee Harris, but I get it if you have to start him. On the Falcons side of the ball here, okay, this has been a pretty good matchup for running backs last year. Bijan Robinson, this is very simple, very cut and dry. Keep it simple, stupid. Start your superstar. If you have Bijan, you drafted him in the first round. They kept talking about how he was going to have the CMC role. Now we finally get to see if that is real, all right? And I think it will be. Bijan should smash. All right, fourth matchup of the week. Cardinals at the Buffalo Bills, 48.5 point over under. So Vegas thinks there'll be a lot of points in this matchup. A lot of debuts here. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr., the Cardinals offense should be much better this year. And it was great with Kyler last year, but James Conner must start, my RB20 on the week. The main concern with Conner is that the Cardinals defense is so bad, they could be coming from behind this entire game. However, in PPR leagues, he's going to get plenty of work in the air, so he is a reliable must start, and there's no one else that we can start here. Trey Benson is just a fun stash at this point. Moving on to the Bills side of the ball. One of my favorite starts, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and say a start of the week at the running back position is James Cook, my RB14. Last year, the Cardinals were a terrible defense, and they were the easiest matchup for your fantasy running back, giving up the most points to fantasy running backs. And by the way, I don't think they really improved at all on defense. In the first round, they took Marvin Harrison Jr. In the second round, they took a defensive lineman who is injured right now. They didn't really improve that much in free agency. No free agent really wanted to sign there. And I think their defense is probably one of the 5 worst in the NFL. So I think James Cook is going to feast. And more importantly, James Cook became the center of this offense when Joe Brady took over play calling in week 11. If you look at week 11 onwards, his averages, he averaged over 20 touches per game last year, over 100 yards per game, and 16.5 PPR points per game. He's a must start, superstar, top 5 ceiling this week. All right. How about the fifth matchup, Titans at Bears? We got the debut for Caleb Williams, the exciting young rookie quarterback. 45.5 point over under here in Chicago. So Caleb does get to start his career at home. For the Titans side of the ball, the Bears were a great matchup last year. Now they have improved defensively, so it's a little bit shaky, like I said, to rely on last year's numbers. We're not relying too much on that right now. But Tony Pollard, I would say, is a must start. I think he's like right on the edge of a must start for me. But I think in most formats, if you've drafted him, he's probably going in your starting lineup. For now, he looks like the safest start in this backfield, specifically when you think of goal line carries. He is the larger back, and he is the proclaimed 1A to the 1B of Tajay Spears. However, I would not be surprised at all if Tajay and Tony Pollard are constantly each and every week switching who's the most valuable player in this backfield for fantasy football. I would label Tajay Spears a spot start, not a player that I'm super confident in starting. And again, I'll have my editor put this graphic on the screen so you guys can understand the terminology that I'm using. Spot start, meaning you can start him if you're in a tough position, or let's say you went 0 RB and he's truly your best option, then of course you can start Tajay Spears. Moving on to the Bears side of the ball here, the Titans are always a difficult defense to face. In the past 4 to 5 years, they've been a very good rushing defense. However, DeAndre Swift still just barely makes that must-start tag for me. I would say he's on the edge like Tony Pollard. He's very close on the edge between a spot start and a must-start. Let me explain it like this. If you're choosing in your flex between DeAndre Swift and a wide receiver in PPR formats, I'm probably leaning that wide receiver personally. Let's say you have a Chris Godwin, and you're choosing between those two names. I'm probably going Chris Godwin in a PPR format. There's a couple factors at play here. Number one, we don't know exactly how this offense is going to look yet. Swift has relied on receptions for his fantasy relevancy in the past, and now he's on an offense where he might be the 4th fifth best option when you think about all the names there. And also, we don't know exactly what this running back rotation will look like yet. Khalil Herbert got a lot of work in preseason. Will he have a larger role than people anticipate? Will he have a role on the goal line? Will Rashawn Johnson play a role? So I think you can start him for sure, but just have lower expectations for DeAndre Swift. There's a lot of things at play that are beyond his control. All right, the sixth matchup is the Patriots at the Bengals. 40.5 point over under here. This is, again, one of three matchups tied for the lowest over under, meaning Vegas thinks there won't be a lot of points in this matchup, but let's try and find where the value is. And by the way, the Patriots are the biggest underdogs of week one. The Bengals are 9.5 point favorites right now as we head into week one. Let's start with the Patriots side of the ball. Ramondre Stevenson, a must start, my RB23 on the week. In non-PPR leagues, guys, if you have no PPR in your league, do not start Ramondre Stevenson. It makes no sense to start him this week. All right, this team is probably going to be down big. In PPR leagues, however, he's got a safe floor with his projected work in the air. The Patriots are likely going to be coming from behind. I could see Ramondre easily getting 5 to 6 targets in half PPR or full PPR. That's great. In non-PPR, that makes him a terrible start. As far as the Bengals side of the ball, the Patriots were middle of the pack against running backs last year. Their roster is pretty bad. Their offense is very questionable, so they could be on the field a lot. But there might not be a backfield in the entire NFL with less answers heading into week one than the Cincinnati Bengals. There's reasons to believe that either Zach Moss or Chase Brown could be the lead backfield. There's many more reasons to believe that they could be in a true 50-50 split. There's a chance the Bengals go up early and both are relevant. However, both could also cancel each other out. So I don't personally have either ranked in my top 30 at the position in week one. I would say 60% of owners have a better option on their roster. Let's get some clarity before we start either of these guys with confidence, unless you have to. All right, the seventh matchup, maybe one of the most exciting games of the week. Texans at the Colts. So many reasons to be excited about this game. Obviously, we get to see Stephon Diggs as a Texan for the first time. Anthony Richardson is going to be healthy, playing again. AFC South divisional game. 49.5 point over under. This is the third highest over under of the week. So Vegas thinks there will be a lot of fantasy cheese in this matchup. All right, let's start with the Texans side of the ball. Joe Mixon makes his debut as a Texan. Top 10 running back in each of the last 3 years for fantasy football, set to feast on volume in a high-powered offense, faces a Colts defense that bled points to fantasy running backs last year. They gave up the fourth most points to fantasy running backs in 2023. Of course, things can change, but Joe Mixon has got to be in your starting lineups. As far as the Colts side of the ball go, of course, you're starting Jonathan Taylor. We don't need to waste time on this. You drafted him early. You're going to start him. I will say, though, lower expectations because the Texans defense is actually legit. Last year, they were 20th in points allowed to running back, so they were already pretty good. Then they added an edge rusher and Danielle Hunter in free agency. Regardless, you can't sit JT. KISS, keep it simple, stupid, start your superstars. Moving on to the eighth matchup, Jaguars at Dolphins. This should be a doozy. 50.5 point over under. The Dolphins are favored, and this is the second highest over under of the week. So we should see a lot of fantasy cheese in this matchup. All right, let's start with the Jaguars side of the ball. Travis Etienne, a must start for me, the RB3 overall last year, my RB5 in week one. The good thing about Travis Etienne is he is script proof. All right, if the Jags are down, they'll use him. If the Jags are up, they'll use him. If they need to throw the ball, they'll use him. He's the ground and air, the FedEx full package. As far as the Dolphins side of the ball, I personally think that you can start both of these names, Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. I have both of them ranked as top 20 running backs. Devon Achane as my RB11. Mostert and Achane were both top 3 in fantasy points per snap last year. These are guys that don't need a huge amount of touches. They both get a lot of opportunities in a valuable offense. They're both must starts for me. And Achane owners, let me just try and set some realistic expectations for you. Do not be shocked if the first snap Raheem Mostert is out there on the field without Achane. Do not be shocked if Mostert out-touches Achane. I just want to set healthy expectations. You drafted him because he's explosive. You didn't draft him because he's a workhorse, all right? I just want to set the right expectations. The ninth matchup we're going to look at here, another divisional game. We've got the Panthers at the Saints. NFC South showdown. 40.5 point over under. Again, another one of those teams tied for the lowest over-under of the week. Not a lot of fantasy superstars expected to come out of this game, but I think there's still value. Let's start with the Panthers side of the ball. Chuba Hubbard is a spot start. He's my RB34 on the week. If you went 0 RB in your draft, Chuba's an option for you. I firmly believe he's the starter until Jonathan Brooks is back. And if you look at Chuba's averages from week 6 onwards last year when he was a starter, he averaged over 12.5 fantasy points per game. He's a fine, put him in there and just don't watch the game at all type of running back if you need. But I would say 75% of people have a better option. Moving on to the other side of the ball, I am so excited to start Alvin Kamara this week. Y'all know if you've been on the channel, that is a my guy this year. He should get off to a hot start in a great matchup versus Carolina, who gave up the 5th most points to fantasy running backs last year. They were so bad against fantasy running backs. And Alvin Kamara has little to no competition. Jamal Williams is there, sure, but Kendre Miller isn't healthy right now. Alvin Kamara should feast through the air and on the ground, my RB10 this week. All right, moving on to the 10th matchup here. Vikings at Giants. This is a playoff rematch from 2 years ago, if you guys remember, when the Giants defeated the Vikings in Minnesota. So this will be a fun one to watch. 41.5 point over under. This is the closest spread of any game this week, meaning Vegas says this is the game that should be the closest this week. That's good for game script in general. But let's start with the Vikings. Aaron Jones, a must start for me, my RB22 on the week. I think this offense could surprise some people. Like, you got Justin Jefferson, you got Jordan Addison, you got Kevin O'Connell, you got Aaron Jones. I think they could be a better offense than people are giving them credit for as currently it stands. But Aaron Jones, a must start for me in a great matchup. The Giants were terrible against running backs last year. We love to see that. As far as the Giants side of the ball, Devin Singletary goes into that spot start range for me, my RB29. This is a pure volume play. You know he's going to be fed, but it's unlikely to be attached to any explosive plays. So again, a spot start. I'd say 75% of people have a better name to start out there. All right, the 11th matchup. This is the start of the afternoon slate of games, all right? So once you've had lunch and all that food is sitting like a rock in your stomach, you're going to be sitting on the couch trying to stay awake, but you know your fantasy games are on the line, so you'll be watching Raiders at Chiefs. Guys, the last time these two teams played, I want you to remember, the Chargers got their ass handed to them. They lost huge. The Raiders put up 60 plus points and Brandon Staley was fired the very next day. All right. The Chargers are thinking about this game. They've had it circled on the calendar since the schedule was released. The over under is 41.5 points and the Chargers are favored. This is a matchup with two defenses that were not good against running backs last year, meaning good matchups for your running back. Zamir White. All right, baby, it's put up or shut up time for this dude, all right? The volume will be there. I've been in his corner all offseason. I think he's going to drown in opportunities. This is your time to shine, brother. This is your time to shut the haters up or to prove them right. We're talking about Zamir White, my RB21, a must start this week. I think he's going to be a very good start. I would not be surprised if he scores a touchdown. He will be the goal line running back for this team. And what if this offense is better with Gardner Minshew, with Brock Bowers? Something to think about. The Chargers side of the ball, the Raiders were 10th in points allowed last year. We finally get to see this Harbaugh-Roman duo for the first time. If the game script goes the Chargers' way, I believe Gus should be a very good start. And I would give Gus the upper hand over any other running back in this backfield because I believe he will be the goal line option. So Gus is a spot start, my RB28 on the week. I don't feel comfortable starting any other name here, but I could totally see an outcome where Dobbins is the guy. I can recognize that. I'm just kind of calling my shot. You kind of have to take all the information that you've heard throughout the offseason, through interviews, through projections, and kind of make a decision, make your shot. And I think Gus is going to be the guy here in week 1. The 12th matchup we're going to look at, this is another debut for a rookie quarterback. Bo Nix heads to Seattle to face the Seahawks. 41.5 point over under. The Seahawks are favorites. Now, here's the good news. Both of these defenses were terrible against running backs in 2023, meaning if you saw these two teams on the schedule against your running back in your lineup, you were like, oh my God, my running back is about to feast. All right. The Broncos were 2nd in points allowed. The Seahawks were 3rd in points allowed. Both of these defenses were booty cheeks against running backs. So we are going to label Javonte Williams a must start, just like DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard. Javonte's in that last range of must starts for me. He's very close to a spot start. If you're choosing between Javonte and a wide receiver, for example, like Chris Godwin, I think I'm going to lean Chris Godwin over Javonte Williams in PPR formats. But every indication is that Javonte Williams is the RB1. But it's hard to know exactly what role Sean Payton envisions for all of the running backs in this backfield. What is Jalil's role? Will he take all third down work? What is Audric Estime's role? Will he take any goal line work from Javonte? I think Javonte is a fine start. It's a great matchup. You can totally put him out there, but there are some questions we need answers to. That's all I'm saying. And as far as the Seahawks go, Ken Walker, smash start. One of my favorite starts of the week. Go ahead and add him in there with James Cook as a start of the week. My RB17. Last year, the Broncos were the best matchup. Well, they were second best in fantasy football. Then they chose a quarterback in round 1. So there's a chance that their defense didn't really improve that much. Ken Walker must start. All right, the 13th matchup we're going to look at here is the Cowboys, them boys, at the Cleveland Browns. 42.5 point over under, and Cleveland is favored. Again, all this is at the time of recording, so things can change, but Cleveland is favored. Speaking of the Cleveland Browns, Jerome Ford is in that spot start category for me. This isn't really a defense that you would target if you have a running back who is, kind of just there as a volume play. He was a top 15 running back in fantasy points per game when Nick Chubb went down last year, so he's a fine spot start, my RB30, but I do have low expectations. There is a chance that the Cowboys offense is firing on all cylinders in Cleveland, and Jerome Ford might not have as much work on the ground as you'd want. Now, as far as the Cowboys go, just like the Bengals, we finally get to see how this backfield is going to be deployed in real life. It's no longer Twitter duels online about, I'm Team Rico, I'm Team Zeke, I think Dalvin's the guy. Now we actually get to figure out who the hell is the guy, and there's a chance they're both splitting work. So I put them both as spot starts. I think Rico Dowdle, the hype train is at an all-time high, so he is the one that I am slightly preferring. But I got to be honest, against the Browns defense, that's a tough matchup. I'm not really excited about either of these names, and I think 75 to 80% of people have a better name to start in their lineup. All right, the 14th matchup, I personally am very excited about this one because I have so much stock of this quarterback who's making his debut in Dynasty Leagues. Commanders at Bucs. Jaden Daniels makes his debut on the road. I'm hoping as a Commanders fan, this is the same type of debut RG3 had in 2012 on the road versus the Saints, where he spanked their ass. I'm hoping, but probably not. 44.5 point over under. The Bucs are favored. Now, speaking of the Bucs, Rachaad White, incredible start this week. Another start of the week for me. The Commanders were so bad against the run last year, 6th in points allowed. Their defense has improved. I will say they added a lot of names. They brought a lot of people over from Dallas. They brought a lot of people over like Bobby Wagner, who's still one of the better tackling linebackers in the NFL, but Rachaad White should beast. And then as far as the running backs for Washington, if I had to start one, it would be Brian Robinson. Again, the goal line opportunities, those valuable touches. However, this is a really tough matchup. In the past 2 to 4 years, the Bucs have been one of the worst matchups for your running back. Last year, they were 30th in points allowed. Tough defense to run on, tough defense to score fantasy points against. So I wouldn't have high expectations for this backfield. Brian Robinson, my RB31, Eckler, my RB37. All right, moving on to Sunday Night Football. Rams at Lions. This is a rematch from last year's playoff. Okay, remember when the Lions barely beat the Rams, Matthew Stafford comes back to Detroit. It's going to be a fun one to watch. This is the highest over-under of the week, 51.5 points, meaning there should be a ton of fantasy points as well. Rams, let's start there. Kyren Williams, a must start. Don't overthink his usage in week 1. You have to put him in every single lineup, but it will be very fun to see what Blake Corum's role finally is. As far as the Lions go, I'm going to label Gibbs and Montgomery both must starts. Gibbs my RB8. I know he's been dealing with that hamstring injury, but the reality is he's been recovering from that for multiple weeks. The team say he's good to go. He's practicing. He should be out there on the field. All right, the last matchup we'll talk about is Sunday Night Football. Jets at 49ers. Aaron Rodgers played just 4 snaps last year. Can he stay healthy in 2024? I hope so. The over-under is 44.5. This is very simple. Start Breece Hall. Start Christian McCaffrey. We don't need to analyze this matchup. Start your stars. Keep it simple, stupid. You guys got this week. By the way, if you want to get updated rankings because things happen, practice reports come out, injuries come out, then sign up to the Flock Fantasy website with the promo code LAND, and you'll get my updated rankings over there. If you become a yearly Mother Flocker member, I'll also review your team as a thank you. I appreciate y'all for watching this. Drop a comment, drop a like, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Love. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.